Hello, everyone, and welcome to ILPS Commission 13's webinar entitled Research and Destruction, the Role of Science in Waging Imperialist War and Fighting for Just Peace. I am Abigail Blanc from Agham Youth, a youth science organization based in the Philippines, and I will be your host for today. This webinar was organized by ILPS Commission 13, the Science and Technology Commission of the International League of People's Struggle. ILPS is an anti-imperialist and democratic formation that supports anti-imperialist and democratic struggles around the world against imperialism and all forms of reaction. The first of Commission 13's planned webinar series, Research and Destruction, commemorates the 75th year of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombings. This webinar attempts to explore the different ways science and technology is used in imperialist warfare against the people, and how the people must unite to take back science and technology for the good of all humanity. The webinar comes in two parts, with part one tackling conventional forms of warfare and part two tackling other forms of warfare. Today, we will hear more about conventional warfare, and I am excited to introduce our speakers with expertise ranging from the impacts of uranium mining in North America to the role of civil R&D institutions in imperialist warfare. Before we begin, a few reminders for the audience. For those in the Zoom conference room, please make sure your microphones are off for the duration of the webinar. If you have any questions for the speaker at any point, feel free to message your question into the Zoom chat or comment on our live stream. Our team will collate these questions, and we will be the ones to ask the questions during the Q&A portion. Without further ado, let's start with the webinar. For our first speaker, she is an organizer and activist based in San Francisco Bay Area in issues of demilitarization, anti-war, education, and migration. Since 2011, she has organized for relevant and accessible education in the City College of San Francisco through launching an offensive campaign against privatization and school closure. Since 2016, she is organized alongside the social movements of El Salvador as a member of the Commission in solidarity with the Peoples of El Salvador through political, education, and material support, alongside the Central American diaspora to share the root causes of migration and for self-determination for the Salvadoran peoples and the true economic and political sovereignty from the United States through campaigns to stop US military funding to El Salvador, campaigns against neoliberal projects of the US. She is also a part of the Resist US-led War movement, which hopes to link organizations to amplify the voices of communities impacted by the military-industrial complex around the world and to build a truly international and internationalist movement against US-led war. Let's give it up for Win-Mon Kyi.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. I'm going to share my screen really quick. Please give me a moment. And thank you for that introduction to the ILPS Commission number 13 webinar.
Okay, so let's give Win-Mon a few minutes. Win-Mon, could you unmute your mic?
Oh, yes. Hi, everyone. Yes, I am part of Resist US-led War. And here right in front of us, just to kick this off, is actually a photo of a large mobilization in the US that's opposing the war that was backed by U.S. Military death squads and had served for U.S. interests in the 80s. And so we see a people's movement denouncing that war, and yeah, I think this would be pretty much what we're going to be talking about today: the role of institutions and its direct involvement in destruction and imperialist war, and also the people's movement for just and lasting peace. So here we go. So here's a quote to kind of kickstart War by V.I. Lenin. War is a continuation of policy by other means. All wars are inseparable from the political systems that engender them. The policy which a given state, a given class within that state, pursued for a long time before the war is inevitably continued by that same class during the war, the form of action alone being changed. Background about Resist US-led War. Back in August 2017, the International League of People's Struggle held the Solidarity and Fight Back, Resisting US-led War, Militarism, and Neo-Fascism conference in Toronto, which brought together 250 people from 21 countries around the world. And this conference really ignited the commitment and the main two unities that Resist is based on. And number one being that Resist US-led War, its main unity is to resist US-led war and militarism. And what does that include? It includes the withdrawal of US military troops, occupation bases, war games, and exercises in West Africa, West Asia, Africa, East Central and South Asia, Latin America, the Caribbean, the Pacific Islands, and East Europe. We want to resist US NATO, AFRICOM, CIA counterinsurgency operations, proxy wars, and other forms of covert intervention. Our commitment is to fight Zionism, apartheid, and systemic racism, fight against the US military-industrial complex, including divestment from the hundreds of billions spent on war and militarization, and redirecting of public funds towards people's needs, development, and infrastructure.
Win-Mon, you are currently muted.
Okay, all right. Apologies, just had to correct something. Okay. So in case I was muted the whole time, the first unity was we want to combat all these things, all the different oppressions that come from war and militarism, and that includes all the bases. We oppose all the bases and different forms of occupation and fight against the US military-industrial complex. And then number two is we want to build just and last peace. And how? Through justice, through social equity, through solidarity amongst peoples, including the recognition through the recognition of the right to self-determination, economic and food sovereignty, and self-defense of nations and oppressed peoples from reactionary aggression and violence. We want to build just peace through genuine sustainable development, job creation, health, and well-being of our communities. So long live international solidarity. And looking at the number one contributor of war, we can see that tangibly and concretely through the spending. And if you see the screen, we have $717 billion currently being funneled in the US government's military-industrial complex. And so this confirms and reinforces war, militarism, and neo-fascism, the foundation of US monopoly capitalism. And so the US's budget is exceeds that of the 7 next largest military spending countries in the world combined. On top of that, in this current government with Donald Trump at the helm, an additional $54 billion has been pushed for military spending. Now, who benefits from war and militarism? We can outline it right here, right in front of us. The people and the companies that benefit are Lockheed Martin, Boeing Company, BAE Systems, Raytheon Company, Northrop Grumman, and General Dynamics. And they each have various, are associated with various arms sales, and their profits continue to rise. Now, the very 2 main contributors are also, we have examined here, again, Lockheed Martin and Boeing Company, which we'll talk more a little bit further down the presentation. But with Lockheed Martin, arms sales include $36 billion with a profit of $5 billion. They're, again, based in the US. And what do they manufacture? Fighter jets, drones, missiles, and the $528 million THAAD missile system. And then with Boeing, they have an arms sales of $28 billion, profiting $5 billion with their headquarters in Chicago. And they manufacture bombers, helicopters, warplanes that really have caused mass destruction, with dropping over 39K bombs worth $1.5 billion in the Middle East, in Iraq, and on Syria. And so who else, what other institutions are a big contributor of war and militarism? Well, we have right here the University of Berkeley in front of us. And on one part of the screen is the campus grounds, which have served as a playground for military recruitment, but also in the departments for research and development too. And on the one part of the screen actually shows an anti-war propaganda that was made by students, and that actually outlines the mapping of the different roles the different departments have played in contributing to war, and the University of California, Berkeley's defense contracts. So the University of California system, UC system, has its hands in very much in war, within the institution of education, and also within the power structure as well. The current system involves what we call the University Board of Regents. And historically, the Board of Regents, it consists of individuals who have investments, who have had actually profited off of wealth of war, and actually like mining extraction, and including like silver. And as an example of one of the actual first board of University of California Regents, had individuals like that had specific blood on their hands of contributing to war. And the next example, is actually another different region within the United States, is Portland State University. Right now, students on the ground are involved in the campaign to address Boeing's hands in the university and its hand in the military-industrial complex with the university. Currently, right now, the School of Business involves internships for students to perform and to work for Boeing Company. And so another form of science that has not benefited the people is actually mining extraction, and through the process of extraction of cyanide to get gold. And so one big company is OceanaGold. Now, this is a very important key struggle that touches different parts of the globe in the fight against mining extraction, in the fight against displacement. And we have here in front of us, where two different sites that are in different parts of the world where gold has their mining sites in. One is the Philippines and the other is El Salvador. And so, and the image in front of us is a mining site is in the Philippines. And so there's different very, very, very valuable mineral sites of gold that would be profitable to this company. And so in the Philippines region, we have the mining site called Didipio, and then in El Salvador, the mining site is they call it the El Dorado project, which is in the region of Cabañas in Santa Marta. And so where there is displacement and like struggle, there's a people's movement. And something that we want to emphasize is that what it takes to fight these large companies, these big contributors to war and destruction, is organizations, democratic organizations that can really expose what these companies and institutions are doing. And this right here is actually the movement of the fight in El Salvador, which actually was victorious in expelling Oceana Gold. And that took over a decade-long struggle. There were, various assassinations of community members and, a very heavy arm of the U.S. That was very, very, very determined to really quell the people's movement, to really, to also not just pollute their water through the gold extraction, but also pollute democracy. And that was the people's call. They were calling for no corruption, no mining, and they were victorious. And currently, the same fight is happening in the Philippines. Now, there's indigenous peoples in the Philippines that are defending their area in Nueva Vizcaya, and the people are not giving up. And so that's what we're here to show, that we want an environment, we want for the people, science for the people, and we want to stop these institutions that are contributing to war and destruction. So so there's a lot to draw connections from various different regions, and that's what's needed now. So our main call to action right now today is also to join an organization for the people that are tuning in, listening. If you would like to learn more about Resist US-Led War, please look at the website. Please follow us on Instagram and Twitter at bit.ly/resistsignon, where our points of unity are there. And the next event that we'll be participating in is, of course, the hashtag Still Here, the 75th Hiroshima Nagasaki anniversary, happening tomorrow. So tune in there, where we'll continue to talk about nuclear warfare that's impacting the Asia Pacific, and specifically in here the South Asian region, where we'll have speakers from India, Kashmir, and Pakistan. So with that, we want to resist imperialist war. We're here to build just peace, and long live international solidarity.